I am NetMoverSitan. Now it's time for a lore video on Nerajatan's Institute. They have much to answer for. Adder augmented technology, changing the purpose of the sanctuary, and causing the events. Don't worry, we'll be getting into that in detail in a specific video, just not this one. The society before the event was at a steampunk Victorian level of development, and that included relaxed attitudes towards child labour, working people to death in 14-hour shifts in a mill or similar industrial building, and the expression health and safety was the words of a troublemaker rather than a concerned worker. It was also a religious society, although some question this before the Institute was founded proper. After Adder gems were discovered to be a more efficient fuel than what was then powering the machinery, coal, and once a means of using it was found, it was used to fuel the machine in the factory, which some of the more devout individuals started to kneel down and pray in front of it, believing it to be a divine creation. Obviously, they never had the Ten Commandments. Certainly not the one about the worshipping the graven image. After an incident with such a machine, due to a fear of losing their jobs, much like with the mills around Regency Britain, much of Nerajatan's sanctuary was bought, partly due to the abundance of Adder gems in the ground, and also because it made great experimental grounds away from huge populated areas. It was at this point that Nerajatan's Institute was founded. From that point onwards, the Institute was responsible for the creation of many technological advances, including electromagnetism, time bending, levitation, dimensional portals, and matter manipulation. Although with even fewer moral standards than outside, as it involved test subjects, starting with a boy that saw things differently, being subjected to a randomly generated path, partly due to the sanctuary being built in a space-time crack. Yeah, not your standard experimental ground, isn't it? Although some were horrified by how Adder was formed, and sought to warn the Empire about this. This provoked a military response against the Institute, which forced them to move ahead quicker with their plans, rushing the experiment to synthesize Adder fuel, which resulted in the event, which not only destroyed those within the Institute, while leaving the building mostly intact, it made 4 individuals into what they were afterwards. They were imprisoned within more than any who would enter it after. Once a way to break the seal from the outside was found, of course. Now we move on to the key figures. Abacus, the second Adder mechanizer, the scientist who bought much of the sanctuary. Morality and ethics were obstacles to progress, at least as far as he was concerned. A fat load of good it did anyone in the end. They exist for a reason, to minimize the loss of life. Then we have Dr. Morike, a doctor who became imprisoned, but not before he betrayed his profession, willingly sanctioning that which set society back by centuries. Finally, we have Father Romero, a priest of Nerajatan, who became imprisoned, but not before betraying his faith. Well, he can go to hell. It was a case of conscious evil rather than an innocent error. You don't do something like this by accident. Oh, I'll be getting to them, don't worry. Much of the military might of the Institutes consisted of mechanical guardians, known as Nerajatan Sentinels. They required no sleep, no fuel other than adder, and could not rebel against their masters. Yeah. Thankfully, they had more safeguards than the machines in the Terminator movies. They could also wield a black steel spear without getting addicted to it. Partly because they weren't human. Although, they appeared to be vulnerable to barbed wire at close range, along with chainswords and electroconvulsive elimination technology. They still patrol the sanctuary to this day. Other technologies developed were kinetic field disruption, which revealed the time-bending properties of Soulblight, the kinetic field generator, which increased damage inflicted greatly, which was initially used in construction, but later had a military application, specifically for blunt force damage. The shocking module, which was something for smaller blunt force weapons, improved damage at the very point of contact with the opponent. Some also wore armor with tubes attached, implying some kind of environmental protection features. There were also medical applications to the technologies being invented by the Institute. In fact, some used high-tension light flares coming from a sword. Think of it as a more realistic lightsaber to perform amputation. The high temperature stopped the bleeding. It also sterilized the wound. Although I expect that without anesthetic, or indeed any form of painkiller, it would be pure agony. And no, I don't know if they had any form of at least dulling the senses other than alcohol. That was certainly the case in the southern lands. I'm uncertain of the Empire or the Church or even the Institutes. That'd probably be something worth looking into, isn't it? In the past, there was one who wandered around the sanctuary in armor that resembled the legendary Minotaur. So they had a similar myth to that which the ancient Greeks did. Although, I doubt that fear alone was utilized. It did provide decent protection. As for protection for the Adder Mechanizer, they wore a special suit which was light and made from the addictive black steel, which allowed for faster sneaking and could passively damage attackers with gloves that protected the hands when high impact energies were experienced, such as from weapons that was used against him. He also wielded a specific weapon after Eckhart, the first Adder Mechanizer, was killed. As for the seal itself, there are a few possibilities why it was in place for so long after the events. It could have been to protect the sanctuary from being overrun by the Empire's forces. It could have also been to protect the sanctuary from anyone from the outside. It could even be out of fear of what passed for life after the events of those that still had consciousness. Who knows? But what was certain was the seal held for quite some time until a way was found to remove it. No, I won't give that away. Not in this video, anyway. Right. That's all the major factions dealt with. Next we'll cover a mix of lore and speculation on Adder, the Pirate Brood, and Black Steel. Well, they keep coming up during these videos, so I was going to have to cover them sooner or later. I'll also cover the events. I'll go into a little more detail on that. Until next time. Hail the rabbits!